Good afternoon, friends. This is Ketamine Diaries, and this is episode 1. My name is JJ. I'm also known as my handle is I am for K Trip online on social media. And so I'm here today with actually a person that I got to know pretty early on in my social media advocacy of ketamine treatment. It was like what, 2020, 2021, 2021
Yeah, it was 2021.
when we like got connected. And I was on just like I had how far into 2021 was it? Because I pretty much started advocating for ketamine in December 2020 is when I first made my first video.
So
And
I think it was October of 2021.
like I think you already kind of knew about ketamine. Is that right?
Well, my doctor had thrown around the idea because we had come to realize that I have treatment-resistant depression. And
Yeah.
she really didn't have very much information on it because none of her patients had gone through that type of treatment before, but she knew that it was kind of new to the scene, at least, in our area. And so she had brought it up a couple of times and I dismissed it. And then finally I just reached a point where I was like, I'm out of options. And so she mentioned it and my daughter was already on TikTok. And so she was like, "Hey, I want to start an account for you so you can see my material." And I was like, "No." I was really hesitant, but she did it. The interesting thing is it was kind of simultaneous with the timing of that doctor's appointment where my doctor was once again saying, I really think that we need to look further into ketamine treatments. And so I was probably on TikTok for about maybe a week or two, no more than that. I really say I err on the side of a week. And I never typed in anything in the search bar. I was so unfamiliar with TikTok. It was so foreign to me. And then one day I opened TikTok. It was actually one night and you came across my FYP, which was just so bizarre. And so your whole account was about ketamine treatments
Mm-hmm.
and, how you had seen the benefits of
Yeah.
this most miraculous treatment. And so I immediately sent you a message and you so kindly responded and answered all my questions and took the time and you were so patient. And
Mm-hmm.
thanks to you, that prompted me to immediately reach out to the clinic that's about an hour and a half from my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's just all history from then on.
When you and I first hooked up, I was just starting my journey into understanding how much there was healing power in the infusion. I had been on that journey of like finding my truest self kind of thing. So yeah, I was pretty much just like throwing my story out there. I was really afraid in the beginning for fear of judgment, for fear of just backlash. I'm talking about, ketamine infusion, if you don't know, is all, has a stigma. Ketamine has a stigma behind it, where it's like a party drug, a horse tranquilizer, and there wasn't a really good, tone behind it. And so I felt like when I began, I was really kind of battling the wall, And but I will say though that I was embraced very easily among the mental health community. People that really gave me hardcore pushback was people that didn't suffer, that didn't
Yes.
understand the power and of the relief behind ketamine infusion. And that, and with ketamine infusion, people that don't know, friends that don't know, ketamine infusion is when there is different ways to administer it. And she and I actually get two different ways of getting it administered, but it's basically when they take small amounts of ketamine and they infuse it through IV or intramuscular. They also have lozenge, nasal spray, and they basically infuse it through you. For me, it's 40 minutes. Other people are a little different, and that's infusion time for those 40 minutes. Basically, kind of refragments my brain, resets it, kind of gets everything back into how it should be functioning. And yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate way to explain the ketamine infusion. And then, of course, there's like the healing powers. For me, the most powerful part of ketamine is the experience itself,
Mm.
where I can heal deeply in these voids and these wounds that were so deep in me, that was the reason why I had this treatment resistant mental illness. And so I find that
Mhm.
that is one of the most powerful parts of ketamine treatment is the actual experience itself.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
There is a process of learning to your healing. It's just not like going in and getting your administered medication. There's like a complexity to it. And if you really use it as a tool, it is very powerful in healing those deep wounds.
Yeah, I was really unsure the first several times I had, and my route of delivery of ketamine at the clinic I go to is the intramuscular. And so it's
Mhm.
an injection. So the experiences were unlike anything that I had ever had. And so I was really unsure, like, am I doing this right?
Mhm.
And is this normal? I mean, is I supposed to be like doing something different? Not that you really can when you are in ketamine treatment, but there was
Right.
just so much that I still didn't understand because there is a learning
Mhm.
curve with this treatment. I mean,
It is.
and until you go through it and
Mhm.
learn, about what you're going to experience. I mean, it's not a cookie cutter type of, treatment because it's not the same for every single person.
No. And it's subjective. Your input strongly weighed in your treatment,
Mhm.
very heavily weighed, and that's why it's very subjective to people's doses and to lengths of time and what works best for them.
Yeah. And,
So,
I remember like reaching out to you and being like, this and this happened. Is this normal? Does this happen to you? But once I had gone through the initial, because I think that what it was at first it was 2 injections a week for 4 weeks.
yeah.
And so that was the initial treatment. And then after that, it was maintenance doses. And, it didn't take me very long to settle into, you know, what the experiences were. And I was able to connect dots pretty quickly with, viewing a pile of dirt and I immediately knew, oh, that is in reference
Yes.
to somebody who was in my life that was not good for me.
Yes. And
I mean, it's,
there's so many insights and messages that are inside the treatment that,
hmm
and some of it is not, black and white, right? It can be symbolic. But I feel like, of course, you're not going to remember everything. That's just not, how ketamine works. But I feel like what you do remember is definitely important in what your subconscious was trying to get across to you. There's
agree.
a reason why you remember certain things or something stands out or that color or that emotion or whatever that was going on in your infusion, something stood out to you. I almost feel like ketamine's messages and insights that I get is a very good way of how to live my life right. Like it's never steered me wrong in how to live my life right. I just feel like it helps me live my life on the right path. It doesn't steer me wrong.
I feel like it really helps to lower the boundaries that we place upon ourselves or allow
100%.
others to place upon us because I don't know if it's your higher self or just the inner knowing, the voices that we silence to appease the people around us or society. We go against the grain of or the fabric inside us that where everything feels right and we start doing everything wrong
Yes.
and it damages us. And so ketamine kind of pushes all that aside. And, those insights they just float to the surface.
They really do.
Personally, I've had a lot of trauma in my life. One experience that I've had numerous times is I become a leaf and I'm just kind of floating actually above my dooryard. It's nighttime and I'm like really close to a light that we have set up and I'm just looking down on everything and I have this realization that it's just life. It's not
Mhm.
earth shattering. Nothing is really. It's just life. And I
Yeah.
always hear that message. It's just life.
My sexual assault. Heinous, absolutely heinous, barbaric, something that just held me hostage for 28 years of my life. But when I finally was able to go in my infusion and see it with a perspective, although I don't forgive what happened, but it allowed me to get pissed. When I was able to see it in the full perspective, oh my God, I can't believe I allowed this person to hold me hostage for 28 years of my life. How dare me allow that to happen? Put things
Hmm.
in different perspective for me.
Well, I feel like I've also had a sexual assault and numerous things leading up to that moment and suffering numerous things since, which actually
Right.
became a stalking issue. And so it's kind of an ongoing trauma is what it's been coined. The interesting thing is that has kind of been thrown into the gamut of everything else that I've endured in my life in ketamine treatments. And
Mhm.
again, it's like, it looks like just little ants on the surface of the ground, and my being, my energy, my consciousness, my awareness is floating above it. And it's like, oh, that's just a small ant. And it does not, I don't need to allow it to have the impact that it's had
Yeah.
on me my entire life, like
Yes.
that chokehold, you know?
All of a sudden, yes. I felt the same way during an infusion. Like I just come out of it being like, why did I allow this for so long? I see it now as such a small thing in my big life. It was through infusions that allow me
And I
to
think it's
take
the
that.
validation that we receive from your society, family. Yeah,
Also helped
silence.
was the with my infusions, the ability to realize the biggest person that will always have my back is myself. So allowing people to invalidate the one person that truly knew what happened, truly knew my emotions, truly knew what I feel, allowing others to invalidate me. So during, my infusions allowed me to realize that I am my biggest supporter. I'm my biggest back. I will never not want the best for me. And when I realized that and I took that value of myself is when I could take back that power. It's
Yeah,
hard, right? Like hard when you've been sexually assaulted and you don't have society's back, right? It's all hush hush.
yeah,
Well, you ruined mine
yeah,
for 20 plus fucking years of mental illness by my
yeah.
silence.
Hacks us in every sense, you know?
Well, I also think, and I also think I can remember when I first started doing social media and I would talk about my sexual assault, my videos would go up for 5 minutes and they would come back down. I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be so ashamed. But then I started healing more and more comfortably out loud. And the more and more I stopped healing quietly and more out loud, like, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. I'm going to be out loud and healing out loud and actually mourning it. That was what it is. Mourning whatever I lost that day. When I started to be able to mourn out loud and say, this happened, is when I started to be able to heal. And it took infusion to get me to that, route.
How many infusions do you feel that it took for you to find some relief from that trauma?
I want to say it was like number 24, 28, something like that. It was farther up in my but
Hmm.
you gotta understand in the beginning I didn't realize that I could use my infusion time to heal. As soon as I figured out that my experience I could use to heal things, I purposely went into an infusion with my intention of I am going to release these chains to the sexual assault. It's like I went in with there with a purpose. And I just come out so fucking pissed. Pissed at myself for allowing some douchebag shithead to have control over me. I was really pissed. So,
Yeah, I understand that. Realize that he was actually a thief. He stole so
yeah,
many parts of me and my life and my joy and my security and my
yeah,
peace and my wellness and my confidence, just everything. There were so many parts of me that got chipped away. And what
yeah.
I noticed is those parts started coming back. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I went in for a treatment and I came out of that particular treatment. I was like, oh wow, yeah, I'm over that. It was all the small parts that were stolen from me were slowly brought back with every treatment. And like I would go into treatment and retrieve those fragmented pieces, you know?
I love it. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
think it's cumulative. It was definitely cumulative. I just remember like the one that I was just like, you're done. Like, this is it. Fuck you. I was like, fuck you.
I think that something I wasn't prepared for, but it was very welcome for me, was the spiritual experiences that I would have going into treatment. I've always been a very spiritual person by nature. I would have experiences and pretty much keep them to myself
Mhm.
because Most people aren't open to that type of thing. So I guess I shouldn't be horribly surprised that I would have spiritual experiences in ketamine. I wasn't too far into treatment. I want to say it might have been treatment number 8 or treatment number 10, but I've never had a good relationship with my mom. In fact, we've never bonded. She really failed me as a mother, failed all of her children, but in particular, me. I'm the oldest. I always kind of was left hanging out to dry all the
Mhm.
time. And so when the traumas happened to me, I was dismissed. Don't rock the boat because it was a family member. You know, she didn't want to upset all the relationships. She didn't want to lose these relationships. And that certainly didn't help our relationship. And so in 2020, she passed away. And so I was in a ketamine treatment and she kind of stepped off to the side of me and like pulled me out of me. And she just had me stand there and look at myself. And she said, "You are so strong and so beautiful. Do you see?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, I do." And she said, "Look at yourself. Just look." And so she held me there as I just saw myself in a way that I've never seen myself. And she said, "Do you see?" And I said, "Yeah." And she embraced me and turned and walked away.
Do you think that she was showing you your true you? What do you think that was about? Like, what do you think she wanted you to see?
I think that my true self was really injured more, even more so by the lack of response by the women in my family because the trauma brought me to my knees. I was just, 13 and 14 dealing with all of this garbage. And back in the 80s, it was like hush
Right.
hush.
Right.
And there was not availability or knowledge on how to deal with traumas. For the most part, I was silenced. And I think that it was as traumatizing that the women in my family all came to know about the things that I'd endured and no one did anything to help me. So, then I developed eating disorders, severe depression and self-harm and, all the things because I just felt so deeply inside of myself.
Right.
And I think that when I had that experience, she was trying to restore what she was part of taking away. She removed parts of me and my faith in women, my faith in love, my faith in safety, all the things that I deserve. That I feel like she was aware of it and wanted to restore that.
Hmm.
And so the animosity, the hurt, the betrayal that I felt, and the abandonment, those issues all seemed to get much lighter after that particular treatment. And, it's not like I did not go to the clinic that day with the thought in my mind, okay, today I want to see mom and, I want to address this and this. There was nothing like that. Now, I do believe in intentions, but I had no intentions of seeing my mother. I don't even know what I would see if I wanted to see her. But the fact that she appeared in a light form was just very real. It was very realistic. Her face wasn't present. It's like my soul recognized her soul. And we just had this communication through our thoughts. And the fact that she could pull my essence out of my body, could view me. And there's just a lot of power
Hmm.
in the ketamine sessions that until you've gone through it, it's really hard to articulate.
It is, and I feel like when entities and presence for me, when they do arrive, it's not me ever speaking them with my lips. It's like I'm feeling what they're saying, I'm hearing what they're saying, but we're not talking. We're like there, we're having conversations, but like my lips are not moving at all. At least for me, when I have presence come, it's usually a it's okay. um for me, especially the one I'm really thinking of is my death infusion, where I had a terrible phobia of death. Terrible phobia. I thought about it all day, every day. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And one of my infusions I was in, and my cousin who had passed away, like, had come to my infusion, into my infusion, and it was her presence. Like, she was talking to me. Like, it wasn't like I saw her lips or anything like that, or even really her full body. It was more just like a presence that I knew it was she. Knew, I knew, I knew. And she just let me know, like, hey, There's nothing to be afraid of. This isn't the end. There's so
mm,
much more than just being put in the dirt. Like
mm.
this is not the end. I'm okay. I'm okay. It's usually a very comforting thing when a presence comes. It's usually a message or to reiterate something I'm already feeling or to help guide me in what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So it's very like
Same,
telepathic.
same.
It's very yeah. It's very telepathic for me. There was this one I can remember there was this one um, time you had mentioned to me that you're spiritual but you're not religious, and
Right.
Jesus came and put his arms around you.
Yeah, and so he started appearing very early on in
Yeah.
the injections, and I was really struggling. The depression was really overbearing, and I was just doing a lot of crying and very despondent. And so I was due for a treatment, and immediately, I mean, as soon as the ketamine took over, Jesus like came out of the darkness and he came towards me and I was like, "Oh, Jesus." And he opened his robe and pulled me in and he embraced me. And I mean, in that moment, I felt my heart get lighter because it was so weighed down with pain
Hmm. Yeah.
and anguish. I mean, the only word I could carry around for years was anguish.
Sure.
In that moment, I just felt something let go. I just sobbed. And I am not religious at all.
Right.
And Mary kind of came down like from the left-hand side of the darkness and she appeared alongside him
Hmm.
as he held me. And so that was, I think, possibly the most powerful. And Jesus has appeared quite a few times
Hmm.
in ketamine therapy, mostly to, I think, show his presence and offer comfort and maybe some sort of stability
Yeah.
to whatever I'm feeling, you know?
I definitely think that there is a safety net, but like there's something safe in your infusion. Mine's a music speaker. I can climb inside my large, it's, bigger than life, a music speaker, and I sit down and I hunker down and hear my music. Other people, I had tree frogs and goddesses, Hindu goddesses. And I think there's like something in us puts like this safe thing. I don't know even how to explain it. Like to know you're okay and that you're healing. It's very common in people's treatments to have something that's common that comes back, comes over and over again. It'll be in their treatments, and it always seems like especially when something gets a little dark, let's say their infusion gets a little dark, it'll pop up. They'll see it, it'll pop up, like, okay, we
Yeah.
got you.
I always experience mine in nature. If I come upon a scenario or a scene, that's what I call them, and it's dark. And it's not so much, I may not see the event,
Right, but you feel it, you understand
but
it.
I feel it.
Yep.
All the feelings inside of me that are
Yep.
attached to that moment
100%.
wake up. And I know, I go, oh my gosh, that's when this happened.
Yep.
You know, I mean, I can always feel,
Hmm.
you know, my body just responding to it.
Yep.
And then out of
Right.
nowhere, a Hindu goddess
Hmm.
will appear. More often than not, Mother Nature, like a breeze, will sweep me up and gently place me either behind the reeds or like in a sort of canopy where plants are kind of just waving in front of me, or I may be in the treetops. It all has to do with plant life. And then I go, oh, I'm okay. I'm safe. Mother Nature herself has come out of the treetops and grabbed me, and placed me other places. So I mean, I definitely feel loved and cared for in those moments.
Yeah.
There's something larger at play
Yeah.
and watching over us.
I feel like for me, let's say it gets a little not rainbows and daisies of an infusion, because you'll have those. When it gets dark, for me, I feel like yes, they get hard, but I feel like they're some of the most healing treatments that I have. Yes, I'm not feeling the greatest coming out of it, but I definitely feel like the aftermath of something the weight came off, or I purged, or something healed when it's a dark one. And I know that people fear having a bad trip or whatever you want to call it, but I don't ever see any infusion as a bad thing. And even when it gets dark, first off, there are ways that you can teach yourself how to, if you're not ready, to refocus, change it up real quickly, like get yourself out of that funk. But I feel like those ones, if I ride it and I deal with it and I do it and I say, this is exactly where I need to be to heal.
Hmm.
There's a reason why this is coming up, and I'm exactly where I need to be to heal, and I get through it. I feel like those treatments are the more powerful ones in my healing.
I agree. I agree. I mean, because you do have some treatments where you don't really encounter anything.
Right,
Nothing dark or nothing that hurt you or nothing that you need to address in your daily life.
right,
And I mean, sure, it kind of does hit a reset, at least for me, for my nervous system,
right. Me too.
but
Yeah.
I don't get any healing from the things that hurt me. And so, but I have had like extremely dark and scary injections. I mean, it is
Well, I feel like one of the, and maybe I don't know if you've had this one, but I feel like one of the more scary ones that is very common is the death that
the
you have,
ego death.
the ego death.
I've
And
had
it can
that.
be very scary, because you're dying, you're in a death in your experience, and sometimes it can be hard to, realize what's real, what's, if it's really happening, if it's not. And, ego death is when the onion has been peeled back to the raw core of
Mm,
what you need to get to, is when you have that
hmm.
ego death. And although it's like one of the harder infusions, scarier ones to have, it's like probably one of the most powerful healing times that you can have during an infusion. It can be scary, it's no doubt. But when stuff like that happens, like I just try to like refocus. Like I start, either I change my music or I try to think of a happy place. Mine's like the Caribbean beach, so I'll use like all five of my senses to think about that. Like I can taste the salt, I feel the sun on my skin, I smell the sunblock. So like there's ways for me, if I'm not ready, or if it's too dark, or if I'm feeling too deep, there are definitely ways that I can reroute myself, refocus, change that up really quickly. But I feel like if I embrace that time, although uncomfortable as it is at that point, if I embrace it and ride with it and just tell myself I'm exactly where I need to be to heal, just you got it, girl. You're exactly where you need to be. When I like take on that approach, I feel like I heal even more.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I've only had one treatment where I had an ego death. And at that point, I had already been receiving ketamine therapy for like 2 years.
Yeah,
And I went in and had an ego death, and the response was really powerful. I mean, I was essentially in space, and I wasn't me, and I was nothing, but I
right.
belonged to everything
Yeah,
because I had become so separate. And
yeah,
and I did a lot of healing. I came out of that treatment, and I really reflected on it for weeks. I had to do a lot of writing,
right.
and I kind of broke down all the pieces inside of me and examined them. I just did a lot of healing. It was a
I
very
love it.
powerful treatment. But in life, I mean,
Yeah,
I finally figured out a huge part of this depression. And I just started, my brain, this is how I described what ketamine did to me, to everyone. My brain lights up. My brain started to light up. And all of a sudden, the veil was lifted and things started to get really clear.
yeah.
So I had this awakening
And
and
then
I
it's
was
like
like
that.
connecting dots. Yeah. And it's just connecting dots everywhere, which was okay. It was empowering and it was a relief and it was kind of scary because my reality was changing, but it was for the better because as it changed, the pain started to kind of flake away. I had this moment in my healing journey where I heard a phrase that I've been carrying with me, and it said, just because you didn't receive it doesn't mean you don't deserve it.
Ooh, I like that.
I'm attempting to write a book, and that is going to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Um, and I keep that like right here at all times, just reminding me the broken parts, those aren't you. That's what other people projected onto you.
right.
And I mean, it's really, it's just the awakening. I mean, ketamine brings awakening.
Yeah. I think that it brings you an awakening, but it also, like, for me, it made me realize that being mentally ill is not you.
Yeah,
Not you, okay? Like, society will tell you all day that your mental illness is you and that's who you are, but it's not, because you know when you're getting ketamine treatment, because you become a different person. You become the mentally healthy person that you have always deserved to be. And realizing that everything that all this illness, it was an illness. It is not you, because that is an ill brain and a healthy brain. And so that made me realize that, because I always identified being who I was as mentally ill. Not, it's just like having diabetes. It's just like having thyroidism. Like, it is just something that has damaged my body, something that is
yeah,
damaging me, you
yeah,
know? And when you can get it under wraps and when you can live symptom free from it, you realize that is not who you are.
yeah. I agree. And I mean, that alone is healing and empowering and something that my doctor had told me, but I actually understood it. Like it's one thing to hear the words, and if you have a depressed brain, they don't really make sense, and you kind of the the external factors are noise in your ears.
Hmm.
And so, the educated voices and people who care, you're like, you're just noise in my ears. Going into ketamine, I understood that so much of what I was enduring was trauma response.
Exactly.
Just trauma response.
And you
That's
just don't
not
realize
me.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly. But you
yeah,
think it is, because
yeah.
especially when you're talking about somebody suffering since childhood, all
Hmm.
you know is trauma response. All you know is your reactions to situations. The biggest eye opener for me was realizing that my mental illness wasn't me. It was just something that
Mm.
was diseasing my brain. The biggest eye opener for me was realizing that the definition of me wasn't my illness. That was huge for me. Realize um was when I kind of got narc enlightened, when I stopped being able to unsee all the toxic shit in my life. Because when you're
Mm.
mentally ill, you do not have enough energy to fight. You become a magnet to toxicity, but you don't have the energy to fight. And that's why the toxic people are attracted to you, because they know you don't have the fight in you. When I really started seeing, and I couldn't unsee it, I could not unsee the bullshit anymore in my life. That was probably one of the biggest realizations for me. And that's when I started, like, cleaning house of people.
It's funny that you just touched on that. You and I have discussed so many times that you can never unsee what ketamine shows you. Once you've seen it, you can never unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
That you've reached a point in your healing where it doesn't matter what the relationship is or how long it's been in your life or
Mm-mm.
what kind of attachment you have to it. You reject it. You're like,
You
sorry,
do.
this is done. You've hurt me. And it's clearly a choice because you've done it time and time again. And I deserve better.
Well, when you stop fighting your brain, you can
Yeah.
fight back others. When you're dealing with your sick brain, like, that's all you can deal with. Better yet, everything else is
Yeah.
being bombarded on the exterior part of your life. Finally, when you get that under wraps and, like, that you start getting silence, you can get some peace and you can, like, think other than just the negative bullshit in your brain. I feel like that's when you, like, really, you can't unsee it. I couldn't unsee it, which meant I couldn't unfeel it. I wasn't going to ignore
Yeah.
it. So I had two choices. I could live with it just in my brain all the time, thinking about how terrible these people are in my life, or I could do something about it. I got rid of a lot of people. I
Yeah.
did.
Same. And you know something? I didn't have a hard time doing it.
I had to do something about it, or I would drive myself crazy. Because I knew that it wasn't good
Yeah.
for me. I would say to myself, you know what's right. You know what respect you deserve to get.
Hmm.
As soon as I realized it, I couldn't unsee it, then it became my fault if I didn't do something about
And, something, it's not just for mental illness or PTSD,
it. No.
but grief.
Oh,
It saved me. I was already a depressed individual and had been my entire life with multiple layers of trauma. But in 2017, my brother killed himself.
yeah.
And I did not see it coming. And it brought me to my knees. and knocked the breath out of me. And I had a really hard time surviving that
Yeah.
because my brother was just such a beautiful soul
Right.
and would give you the shirt off his back, never hurt any living being, and just he was an amazing artist. And
Yeah.
it hurt being the oldest. It was,
I get that.
also like this maternal factor because I had to be play the role of mother so much in their lives. So I took that really hard. And then 11 months later, I lost my baby sister to alcoholism at the age of 38. And she knew that the drinking was killing her and she couldn't stop. The medical community called it a slow suicide. But I got to spend that 11 months, talking to her every day on the phone, and she would call me crying and say, I'm so afraid to die, sis. But she couldn't stop the madness. She couldn't stop the addiction. She was responding to all the traumas in her life. She would ask me to pray with her, and we did a lot of laughing together. We did a lot of crying together. We grieved together. We shared our poetry and our secrets. And it was a very gifted time to be with her. I mean, that's two very traumatic losses in 11 months. In 2020, on Mother's Day, I get the call first thing in the morning, hey, your mom died in her sleep. And I was like, what? What? And it was an estranged relationship. But nonetheless, it really took me time to wrap my mind around that. And I still wasn't done crying from my siblings. Then, I mean, I really crashed and burned in 2000. I wound up in the hospital for 3 weeks because I myself was suicidal.
Right.
And I lost, life didn't make sense anymore. And I was really stuck in this place of why bother? Nothing makes sense. I don't understand. And so that ruminating thought of why bother was all I could say in my brain day and night. So when I did reach out to the ketamine clinic, this guy was so great. I left a message. Then he called me and I missed his call. We played phone tag back and forth for a hot minute. And then we finally connected and we set up an appointment, and then I got scared. Yeah, I did not get scared for the reasons that people around me get scared. But I thought to myself, every medication I've tried has failed me and put me in dangerous situations. I feel like this is my last hope, and if this fails, I'm done for.
Right.
So I was so afraid to try it because it was like, what if this is one of the failed attempts too?
Hmm.
Um, because I had canceled that appointment. He called me back and he said, hey, do you want to have a conversation? And I said, yeah, maybe. And I said, I'm just so afraid. And he said something so profound to me. He said, honestly, I can't think of anything scarier than untreated depression. And I had to sit down when he said that. And I said, yeah, I'm terrified. And I said, I'm losing this battle. Every
Yeah.
day I'm getting closer.
It's yeah.
You
It's
know,
like
I,
drowning with your little nose above the water, just enough,
it is. And
but
you're
it
so
feels like
exhausted.
you're
Yeah.
just
I mean,
gasping.
I had been treading water and circling the drain for
Hmm.
so long. I was so depleted. I had nothing left.
Absolutely.
And after the first treatment, he came rushing in the room after and he was like excited. He said, what? So how was it? And I stood up and looked at him and I was like, that was weird. I don't know. This is going to sound weird. I feel lighter. I
Yeah.
don't feel heavy. And he smiled so hard and he said, everyone says that. Keep
Yeah.
coming back. He said, you're going to
Perfect.
start feeling so much better. Yeah. I remember crying so much that night because I started to feel like a human being again.
I know.
And I hadn't felt alive in such a long time. I already had all this trauma and depression, but if you compound that with traumatic loss
Hmm.
and that grief wiped me out. And the ketamine really helped me to unpack that and learn how to live with it. And instead of life is happening to me, I started to happen to life. And yeah, and it made all the difference.
I like that. I like that. Exactly. Say that one more time.
So instead of, me feeling like life was happening to me, I started happening to life.
It's so you're absolutely right. And
It puts you in the driver's seat. It does.
You're able to take control.
Hmm.
You're able to take control back. I definitely feel like there's something beyond what this is. Definitely leave and go places.
We do healing on more levels than you go into ketamine treatment thinking is going to
Yes.
happen. There is a spiritual healing. There is a mental and emotional and physical healing. It's the entire being. And there are parts of us that go completely ignored and unnoticed.
I feel like with ketamine, it allows you to go in areas of your brain that you just cannot possibly access in everyday life. I feel like we can go in those areas of the brain to heal our mental illness, to heal that trauma. No hate to therapy or anything like that, but I will tell you, over the 20 plus years of therapy, I did more therapy in these infusions than I ever did with a therapist sitting with me.
It's self-based. We are the patient, but we are the therapist because we have this knowledge stored away.
We do, and we're the therapist, we're the patient. But like to truly know when it's what's ready to come up, when it's time to come up, when it's time to heal, like is really on you to know. Ketamine allows you to bring the things up when you're absolutely ready, and it does not bring things up until before you're ready. I truly feel like that.
I agree.
It really brings.
And it's interesting, some of them are so full of, like you call it the purge, and I like that. Some of them are so full of the tears. And I remember my daughter driving me home from a treatment, and I had just been crying uncontrollably. And all of a sudden, I just kind of turned to my daughter and I said, "Hey, did you know that none of us are born knowing how to love or how to hate?" And she just kind of looked at me shocked and she said, "Wow, Mom." And I said, "We're taught how to love and we're taught how to hate." And I said, when we're born, we are just a blank slate and we have basic needs
Yeah,
and that's it. And I said,
so true.
and everything else. Yeah. And
It's so
that's not
true.
something I'd ever given thought to, but it was like, I just have these, it's like something whispers in my ear when I go into treatment and I come out with these nuggets. I really love that ketamine is bringing me to these places of healing where I feel strong enough to pick and choose where I'm going to place my energy.
Ketamine helped me realize that I'm the most important. I realize is that loving yourself is the most healthiest thing that you can possibly do. Really, truly loving yourself. It's a trickle down effect. And I realized that the more I loved myself, the better people I attracted in my life. I was the biggest person that was going to get my own back in life. So as soon as I
Yeah,
got my own back and started really loving me and being like, you know what, I got your back, girl. And the more good I loved about myself, the more I attracted people that were better for me to be like, hey, you don't have to appease everybody. You don't have to be the people pleaser. You can say no and people will be pissed. But
yeah.
what's right? What's healthy for you? Because I would do anything. I really would.
I just really wish that we didn't have to reach these levels of desperation
I
to
know.
find ketamine because it's a lot of needless suffering and it's a lot of needless loss.
And I was just at the clinic that I was at on the 23rd, and I was sitting with the CFO, and he was telling me that in order to do Spravato, which to me I don't think is near as effective, but that's just me because I'm partial.
Mm,
To do Spravato, you must be on an antidepressant and you must have had two failed attempts at two different types of medications before allowing to be even considered for insurance to cover Spravato. That is just bullshit to me. Why should you have to wait and be miserable for two failed attempts? That could be a year. You have to be on an antidepressant. So I said to the CFO, I said, so somebody like me, who is clearly 100% effective with ketamine, I would not be a candidate. I would not be a candidate for Spravato at all, like across the board, because I don't have major depression. I have bipolar. And two, I am not on an antidepressant. I'm on a mood stabilizer. So right
mm,
there, I would not be covered or even the ability to be approved for Spravato.
yeah.
That's crazy to me. Why should you have to suffer?
I mean,
Why? Why can't this be a first choice? Why does this have to be a third choice?
I agree with that. And it just because from personal experience, me desperately trying med after med and after
Yeah, me
med,
too. We suffer for another year.
Well, and put them in a dangerous place. I mean, it's,
Because you're suicidal, you have ideations, you have intrusive thoughts, you have it all, right? Put him in a very
and
dangerous situation.
you simply lose your will. It's gone.
You do. No.
You know, it's a very dark place to be.
Yeah.
There's just this secrecy. So you don't go around advertising to everybody, hey, look, I'm done. I'm over here. I'm just peace out. Okay.
No, you're more thinking, I'm gonna take my hands off the steering wheel while I drive. You're secretive, but you're like, you think it.
Gets me is you got to be strong enough. First of all, if you are in a clinical major depression and you have suffered for so long and you were so depleted and you were so exhausted and you're so done and you still have to play with all these medications, like out of you're desperate. At least I know with me, I was like, yeah, look, we did this for months, I'm still bad off. So let's
Yeah.
switch and try it again. Okay, so now I'm going to try it, and I have these different side effects, and I might feel a euphoria for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden the suicidal ideation is back with no warning. And I'm in an even more dangerous place because I didn't get the spiral. And, and I finally I got done playing this game of roulette. What didn't make sense to me is, but I'm so exhausted
Mm-hmm.
on a cellular and spiritual level. And yet I still have to meet these guidelines before I try ketamine.
I think one of the hardest parts about it is when they get you to the last resort and then it's ketamine to make that phone call
Hmm.
and put in the
Hmm.
form for a clinic to call back because they have now put you to the last resort. Like you are at death's door. It's crazy to me. Like how many people I think of that don't get ketamine just because they can't make the phone call. They're just too tired.
I can tell you with certainty, if my brother and sister had had access to ketamine, I really believe they'd still be here. I try to live in a place of gratitude
Me
that
too.
by some miracle or I'm loved very deeply by someone or some entity out there, that kept ushering me to these places of safety. Had I not been in the hospital when I got the call about my dad, I'd be a goner because I was already done. And so the only time I've ever been hospitalized my entire life, my dad leaves. I feel that way about ketamine. Somebody somewhere really loves me to have brought me to this treatment because it's what saved
Yeah.
my life.
The universe aligned and made a clinic in my home city. There was only like 3 clinics at the time in the whole country. For them to have one 35 minutes from me, something was looking
Wow.
down on me saying, "Hey, I got your back. You need to be here. You got some more time." Because I was at the, "I'll just pull my hands off the steering wheel. I'll be good. Let me just go. Let it just
I
go."
know.
But that's how scary it was. I was that tired. And the only thing that kept me alive is really my little daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, and my husband. I knew that I would wreck their lives if I killed myself.
I had firsthand experience with this really intimate loss of my brother and sister.
Yeah.
I've always said I'm going to cry till I die, because of the way that I lost them. And once I started to heal through ketamine, I started to have thoughts like, I'm a strong person. I'm a resilient person. I don't know, why would I want to put my children or my grandchildren in that place where they have to fight to survive?
Yeah. The main reason why, not only did they tell me that there was nothing else for me, but I remember thinking to myself, my daughter was 5, and I remember thinking to myself, I never want her to be embarrassed because I don't show up for an event. I don't ever want her to be making excuses because why my mommy's not here because she's mentally ill. I said, fuck it, let's try it. I'm ready to knock. Let's do it because what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose? I don't want her to ever feel like mommy can't get out of bed. And I just said, fuck it, let's do it. Let's just try it because I have nothing else. Nothing. They told me there was
And
like
it,
they literally had said there's nothing.
it opens up the doorway to when you are in ketamine treatment for a little bit, not even very long. Like I've always enjoyed writing, but I had hit this writer's block
Mm-hmm.
that regardless of all the exercises and all the suggestions that I tried, I mean, I really tried everything and I couldn't
Yeah.
come unstuck. And the ketamine cleared that for me.
I can remember that was some of our conversations was in the beginning you were just like, I just can't get I used to love to write. I used to love to write. I just can't get it back. And that was a definite worry for you that you never get it back. Definitely encouraging to hear that you're writing a book and that you're loving it again, because I can remember those conversations that you
Yeah.
wanted it so bad and it just the joy had not come back for it. So that's great that it's turned around and you're able to, and I really feel like it's cumulative and saying that to everybody, like it's cumulative because you were not the same person that you were 3 years come October. I can attest to that talking to you. You're not the same person in your healing. You were so much more healed, like the
Hmm.
healing in the last few years. I can remember our conversations in the beginning, and it was a lot of you never thought you could get the power back from your stalker, or you didn't think you could get your joy back to writing, among other things. And they were like definitely stuff that you just never thought you would be able to get over or get back. Or and look at you now, you're just like, fuck the stalker. I'm writing my book. How exciting is that? That
Yeah.
makes me
And
happy.
and me too. And I'm so grateful for your presence in my journey because it's really because of you I started the ketamine treatments because I was just so hesitant. And you just kind of started knocking down those fears and you're like sharing your experience and giving me the pointers to make myself more comfortable going into ketamine therapy. I learned a lot from you. And it is thanks to you that I got brave
Oh,
enough to make that call.
glad you
I'm
did.
eternally grateful.
I'm so happy that I've been here along this way to watch your journey. It's been a beautiful and watching it. I can definitely attest from the first day we spoke to now just how strong and just how much of a healing journey you've been on. There was a lot of worry in the
Yeah.
beginning. There was a lot of, I don't know if this is going to work. Even in the beginning, you were getting them pretty close together. And so for you now to be able to do tropes and just, every 6 months, I
Yep.
am is amazing in its own.
It is because I'm going about 6 months. Yeah.
Just the worry you had in the beginning. And there is a lot of worry because you do worry that this is going to be another failed attempt and how long is it going to last? That was always mine, was when the jig up, when's the ball going to drop and I'm going to start feeling horrible again. That was
Yeah.
always my worry. And now I'm almost 9 years in and I actually feel better and better. Because I feel like the more I heal, the stronger my symptom relief is because I'm healing from all the things that cause me the symptoms. I'm totally not the same person 8 years ago that I am now. It's been a journey of healing, and I try to really remind people of that when they do a lot of comparison, on social media of how far I am and what they feel like now, and I'm like, you can't compare. We're apples to oranges on how long that I've been in this journey versus, somebody that's just come on. Nobody's gonna be the same, and it takes
Yeah.
time. And it's
Yeah.
slow and steady wins the race. It's very slow and steady. And then you look back and you're like, whoa, I come that far. I almost feel like with ketamine, you can't look at it as ever having a finish line
That is
because
great. I love that.
you almost have to look backwards to see how far you've come. Because if you continue to look at there's a finish line, there's not a finish line because this is a journey. This is a
Yeah.
journey to finding your truest self. Like, yes, we are combating mental illness symptoms, but at the end of the day, it really is finding your truest self, finding who you are,
I love that.
who you deserve to be, your healthy you. So I don't feel like there's
Yeah.
ever a finish line. You ever think you'll go more than 6 months? No, because not that I
Mm,
don't think I can't. It's just I have
mm,
capped myself every 6 months because there is something I gain out of doing an infusion. It will never
mm-hmm.
be a time that I don't want to eventually do an infusion because I gain something. I gain perspective, introspection, healing, therapy, all out of that experience. So I just cap it at
Yep.
6 months.
I think that, for the most part, people are used to taking a pill and after a period of a couple of weeks, you start to feel better.
Yes,
And then it's like, oh, you're just coasting. But this is a different treatment because
it
you
is.
will feel immediate relief from the dangerous symptoms,
Yes.
but the healing takes time because you're actually unpacking stuff. You're not masking it.
Yes. I feel like it's like parallel treatment. You got your ketamine administering you to get those dangerous symptoms gone, but then you have your healing therapy kind of running parallel so that you can really dive in and heal those deep voids and traumas.
It's not just oh, okay, I'm going to go into ketamine therapy. It's going to fix me and it's just done. It's work.
It
It's,
is
you
work.
need to be committed to it, devoted to it.
It's like it's an everyday thing. Like, yes, you go in for your infusion, but all that time in between your booster is work. Being proactively moving forward in your healing and
Yeah.
working towards removing those survival coping skills for healthy coping skills and transitioning your life. So much goes into it. It really is. It's work.
You will come to a place where you used to live. And I definitely noticed that. I felt it immediately. I remember reaching out to you so many times and saying, I have to go once a month. This is so hard. I got to go once a month all the time. Is this ever going to get better? Is it always going to be once a month? And you just kept saying, hang in there. You know, you're healing. Look at how far you've come. And you were urging me to do that. Like, look back, compare yourself from then to now. And all of a sudden, I started reaching like, oh, I can go 2 months.
Yep.
And then I got real brave and like jumped to 4. And I was like, wow, hey,
Yep.
I'm doing okay. And now I'm
Yeah.
at 6 months. I think that that's an important thing for people to know too. And there's no shame to your game. What works for you, hold on to it, hold it close to you, and just go with the flow. Trust yourself, trust what you know and what you need.
Exactly. It's what I mean.
But it won't always be that way.
No. Everybody's different in their healing. I know people that have been getting it a while and still monthly, and then other people that come right off the block was every 2 weeks in the beginning. Like, just because I
Hmm.
was very close together in the beginning does not mean that that has any reflection on 8 years later. There's no shame in the ketamine game. You do it when you need it, and and you know when the slide happens, it's time.
And you know when you need that reset button to be hit.
Yep. Yep.
I'm so grateful for ketamine. Look how
Me
far
too.
things have
I
come,
know, right?
you know,
I know. I'm
right
so excited.
here in this space it saved 2 people.
100%. If I would have listened to my doctor who had adamantly told me not to get him done, I'd probably be dead. I'd probably be
Hmm.
dead. That's
I
where I
believe
was.
so.
Sometimes you gotta be your own advocate, your biggest supporter. I just knew when I called the clinic that day, I knew there was something. Thank you so much, Angel, for coming on my Ketamine Diaries podcast. It's always great, friend, to have you on here and tell your story because I just think it's so fantastic. You've come so far. I'm so proud of you, friend.
Thank you. I'm proud of you and I'm grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you.